Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us this afternoon. I'm Bertrand. I'm a lawyer from Ogier in Luxembourg.
I'm Aaron from PingPong.
It's great. Today we will zoom out on the global evolution of payment, reg, and tech. So, Aaron, how payment have changed in the last decades?
Yeah. So I think it has been an enormous change for the last decade, right? So in terms of payment, I think particularly one obvious effect you will see is payments getting real time anywhere, right? So it had changed from getting real time domestic, but also evolving to getting real time cross border, and then you see payments is always a service that is associated with the business activities. So whenever there's a new form of business activities or the new form of economy comes into being, then there will be change of payments because there will be new demand on the payments. So for example, the gig economy, the share economy, right? So I think there's been hilarious past decade for payment industry.
Thank you. In the legal side, I think the bigger change has been the entry of non-banks in the payment sectors. In terms of regulations, of course, we had PSD2 in the EU. We get license pathway in the US. We get PICs in Brazil, so a lot of regulations. So payments, at least on the legal side, are not only banking now, but there's a lot of other providers. So Aaron, I think you're very active in cross-border, but why is cross-border still a very, I don't know if I can say that, but a pain point in terms of implementing solutions?
Yeah, so I think a pain point for cross-border, because it involves so many different corridors and countries, and so many different regulations in terms of how payments should be honored, should be regulated. Therefore, for people doing business today, because the level of degrees of globalization is so huge compared to many years ago, the regulation has not been evolving in accordance with the business pace, and therefore creating frictions. So companies like us, we trying to build infrastructure that has deep roots into all these major economies and regulatory bodies, and to see how we can actually connect the pieces together so that provide a seamless solution and experience for corporates doing business globally.
I think on the legal side, the issue is slightly the same. So we get regulations different in each jurisdiction. So we get PSD3 coming in the EU. We get payment services reform in the UK. The Middle East and Saudi have specific platform now in place. Later, there is a mix between high regulations and innovation, so we have to, I would say, jungle with a lot of different regulations and try to make them work together. So in terms of new business model, what we are seeing now, I would say in Luxembourg, is all the payment capabilities being embedded together with logistic platforms, SaaS companies, marketplace. Do you see exactly the same in your sectors?
Yeah, I think our the major sectors that we work with are the sectors where you have naturally a lot of cross-border business activities. Exactly to your point, marketplaces, logistics, OTAs, and also those SaaS platforms. I think if you think about it, today a lot of the platform businesses or platform sort of activities happens in those verticals. It enables a lot of the SMBs to do business easily, whether to provide a service, whether to sell goods globally. And when there are platforms offering those easy offering of goods and services, payment companies need to provide respective solutions for them and for the merchants and users on that platform. So I think these are exactly those verticals that we focus very much on. I think if you look at our the transaction processing volumes that we help with, the majority of those are exactly from those verticals, and also the major commerce corridors that includes Western markets to Asia, particularly China, Southeast Asia are on a hot spot.
Yeah, and actually for us as lawyers, create a lot of work because there's a lot of questions that raise. So who will be holding the customer funds? Who will be providing the AML and KYC check? Who at the end of the day is the payment services providers? So innovation is it's pretty good, but it's is global and raising a lot of questions. When you speak about regulations, have you seen trends in terms of regulations and on the global economy?
Yeah, I think we do see some trends. I think in terms of the trends, I think there are usually two ways, right? So one aspect is the regulators becomes more aware of a certain type of business activity or payment activity. So whenever, in the early days, maybe they are not so regulated, now they become to be regulated. For example, some of the acquiring capabilities in particular markets in the Middle East are unregulated in the past, but now the regulator becomes aware of, okay, how do I protect the consumers in terms of, prevent a fraud from a bad merchants, and they start to come up with regulations to the PSPs for processing those transactions, and there's a requirement for them, for the PSP to get a specific license to provide the acquiring business or the payment gateway business. On the other aspect, I think the technology advancement, there are new form of technology and the payment methods coming to being. For example, there are a lot of topics around stable coins and cryptos, particularly in this event, right? So then we see a unanimous attention from the regulators to really deep dive into how to regulate it, whether we should regulate this, how we regulate this, what is the purpose of regulating such a new technology? Is it to prevent, is it largely to protect, or is that largely to promote? So I think these are different stances, and maybe different regulators would take differently. So as a payment company, we are engaged in a lot of discussions, for example, with the CSS from Luxembourg, to dive deep into, okay, what it means when there are new form of payments are needed, and we are interested to providing solutions. What is the stance from the government or regulator perspective? What do they expect us to be a pioneer in that? Who should we protect, and who and what aspects should we promote?
Yeah, and it's exactly what you are also seeing. You mentioned stablecoin, and we are seeing a convergence in terms of regulations. Of course, MiCA in the UAE, we see framework being put in place in Singapore, for instance, and the same in different jurisdictions. So I think convergence and trying to get this common framework would definitely assist in the globalizations of the new means of payments. And finally, I think it will be a key subject for you, but what do you think the future is in terms of global payments?
Well, I think, the future of global payments is really to make things really easy, really accessible, really swift, real time, right? So in the end of the day, whether you're a consumer or whether you're a business, whenever you are collecting from someone or you're sending to some your counterparties, you want that to happen instantly. You want that to be secure. So I think, on one hand, I think, more regulators will evaluate, how to make sure there's an underlying framework of safeguarding and protection there, so that other players will be compliant with that. On the other side, I think, technology will definitely play a huge role in terms of, how we get to the next stage in terms of processing, in terms of clearing, whether it's centralized, whether it's decentralized. I think there's a lot of advancement there. So in the end of the day, I think, payment should be a seamless. Payment should be even unnoticeable in the future, whereby to make it a business activity and the personal experience is superb.
Yeah, if I understand correctly, I think what you need is collaboration between innovators like you and regulators, as you can have in Luxembourg. And I think Luxembourg has done a pretty good job in interacting a lot with innovations. And you're based in Luxembourg, so what is your experience with the Luxembourg regulator?
Yeah, I would say so far so good. So we really are blessed with by the business environment sentiment, and also the local regulator support to our business, and that really help us to have a strong foundation to cover the whole European Union. And we think there are more activities and initiatives we can discuss with CSSF and with the local business parties. This is always a center of financial services in the region, and we are glad that we have our early roots there, and we look forward to grow together with the local community.
So Aaron, thanks for your time today.
Thank you, Bertrand. It's my pleasure.
Pleasure. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.